You want to hear the real story behind the rock artists, the albums, and the songs that have become the soundtrack of your life, straight from the legends who lived them? I'm Adam Reeder, the Professor of Rock, and on the Professor of Rock podcast, we go deep into the heart of the music that defines us and our greatest memories. Exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes moments, and the untold truths of rock's greatest hits, told by the artists themselves, stories you won't find anywhere else. If music moves you, this is your backstage pass. Subscribe now to the Professor of Rock podcast.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
I'm Sue Minahan. This is Talk Cosmos. We have a special guest today. We're talking about dwarf planets, and it's a little different therefore. Usually it tells a little bit about myself. I founded this in 2018. It's weekly with various panels. I happen to be an astrologer. I do evolutionary. I'm a graduate of the Dwarf Planet University, tutor a bit with them, thankfully, and I study vibrational astrology. I love mythology. I blog, etc., etc. I have a music degrees, but more important, today, right now, I have a wonderful guest, Melissa Elvira Billington from Australia. Hi, Melissa. I'm in Hawaii. You're in Australia. We're on the Pacific. This is great. And Melissa, Nate, maybe we should jump into our slides. Okay, yes. Today we're going to talk about these three, and we'll go into more about that, Makemake, Varuna, and Quaoar. And Melissa, just to tell people a little bit about her, she's in Brisbane, Australia. And yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And has the blog Trust the Longer Journey on Substack. She's an astrologer, teacher, an artist. I love that. A yogi. How I added extra yogini.
Yogini.
Yeah. Oh, very good. My Yoga Freedom is her brand on YouTube, and you can also find that on Substack. And she's a co-teacher and co-author of 3 books with Alan Clay at the Dwarf Planet University. One of them is on a subject that we're talking about today, Makemake. And she's also an actor in film, theater, stand-up comedy, and has 2 performances that are just delightful, and others and that I don't think she's actually put online yet, but we're waiting for. Heaven on Earth and Pocahontas, a great parody of many dynamic thoughts. And in addition to all of this, Melissa is in her graduate studies in environmental realms at the University of Queensland in Brisbane. So I'm excited. Shall we talk about what this was your idea, which I'm so grateful for? Like, we are doing the higher octaves of the 3, 4, these planets that are ingressing into a new sign. It relates so powerfully because the 3 higher octaves are remaining in close conjunction. Their orbits mirror each other, 280 some. Around 300 years, give or take.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
you have that in the slides. I like that you added that in to give people a perspective of the planets that we know that we're familiar with, Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. Now with these discoveries of the dwarf planets in the last 25 years only, they expand us out exponentially into space. In our solar system. So the ones that we're looking at are, as you're saying, in that realm of about 280 to 300 years to revolve around the sun.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating. I went through and checked. They go about 3 degrees. They go down a pair. There will be a conjunction later this summer, and we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, they stay in such close orbit of degree. They may expand a little bit to 4 or 5, and then they shrink right back to conjunction of the degree. So it's.
What do you make of that? They're working together.
Yes, and the dynamics. There's an emphasis here and an emphasis there, but still it's this evolving consciousness. And they're all, as you had pointed out, I'd forgotten that Makemake is also a creation god. So they're all creation gods.
Right, this is the time. If we're going to create a new world, it is now.
Yes. So and they actually go beyond 2039, but that's when Quaoar ingresses Aquarius, and so maybe in the 40s they begin. But Varuna is in Leo. It's 279 years, and it is the higher octave of Saturn. And we've started with this because Saturn is the first to ingress, which is actually today. The day.
It's today. I think it was next week.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Today is, whoops, what did I do? I goofed. I went backwards. Okay, that's right. It's in a week. Thank you. And then
all coming
following that will be Jupiter with Quaoar, which is in Capricorn, and Jupiter will ingress in Cancer on June 7th. And that's the one that goes into Aquarius in 2039. And then finally, Makemake in Libra, which has the longest orbit, and Uranus is a lower octave, but Mercury is a lower octave of that, which ingresses in July.
I think that's a good example of the higher octaves, because it's already in traditional astrology established that we work with these ideas of the octaves, right? The harmonics between when a new planet comes into our consciousness. So we already accept that Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So then moving from that, we now have another octave, an even higher octave, which is Makemake. And I just wanted to ahead. Saturn, is that May 25th? Or am I forgetting? Was that in April?
Oh, yes, it's May. Thank you very much. My apology, folks.
No, it's okay.
May. Yeah, all these clips. Also to bring in, Mercury and Uranus rule, as it is thought, astrology. So that's really an exciting dynamic too, which is a cultural thing. We will expand more. Now, a few of these illustrations are from the Dwarf Planet Astrology or University, Dwarf Planet University. Their website is, and I'm sorry it clipped that, but it's dwarfplanetastrology.com. And they happen to be having a class, which we'll show at the intermission at half hour after that, when the next class is coming up. So just to give credit to this wonderful university that both Melissa and I.
We were both at from the start.
We were. We started with Sedna. We did in 2021. Yes. In fact, I think he had classes before that. He had 2 classes of Sedna in 2020. It was.
Yes.
Yep. Or even earlier than that. Yes, indeed.
It's been a little while.
Right. So there's various ways to work at this, but Saturn and Aries, what I had thought we might begin speaking is the possibility of spectrum of realities. It's so expanded. And Saturn and Aries, what if it leads to responsible autonomy? Do you have any?
So, yeah, I mean, I suppose just clarifying that what Saturn is about, right? Authority. And I think we can say that we have been, to some extent, relying on external authority and on some kind of consensus reality. And I feel like with all of these shifts, we have an opportunity to rejig that into a shared, co-created, collective reality.
Yes.
And within that, then Saturn going into Aries, the internal authority or the autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Aries is action. It's concerned with your own motivations. And it's necessary. It's necessary to evolve, to become a new identity. And it can change at any particular time. If it doesn't work, reshift. Essentially, that idea of your autonomy can have some accountability, which really relates to Saturn. And these, in turn, reflect over to Varuna in Leo, which again is an enormous dwarf planet archetypal energy of sovereignty. And with Leo, that echoes it. It supports that idea so much.
So we had talked, and I'm not sure, you need to guide me on timing for the overall show because you're the expert in that realm. But did you want to mention at all about the shift of Saturn, that we've been in Pisces, and what has that meant? And
we could, of course. Yes, it has been for 2.5 years.
In the last couple of years. And that might give a sense of what's happening next week.
Well, that's true. We're still within it, aren't we? Because it is May 25th. You're correct.
Yeah.
And water, because Pisces disintegrates. And so it's prepared us, as you say, to break down that idea that we're always looking outside of ourselves because it's deconditioning ourselves. That's the beauty of it.
Disintegration and deconditioning, I think, are really great words. And so that primes us. It's like we can see it. Things fall apart. The authorities, we're not trusting them anymore. It's not working anymore. It's disintegrating, and we're deconditioning ourselves from that being the way to go, right?
And I love the idea that Varuna is the higher octave, because Varuna, as we've learned, is about the sovereignty we have within us that we create through doing something that we love over and over, that people will then look at us as having that mastery, also the nobility. And so if we are responsible in our autonomy, that also relates to our integrity of credibility, which has nobility and has sovereignty. And Varuna will be in Leo for the 14 years, and it actually stays in Varuna for much longer, I think.
Yes, because they're farther out, so they're really embedding the qualities. It's not like Saturn, which is every 2.5 years.
Yes, and it will shift exactly, which we bring up to.
But there is that feeling sort of up-leveling, of going from the ones that are closer in, they move us through, and yet the ones that are farther out reiterate it in all of the other, right? Yeah,
large, exactly. Personal versus the transpersonal ideas of how we interact with the worlds that we reflect to. Well, we will go through some of these later in different manners, but this is an introduction, and I'm, to yourself and also to our audience. Quaoar.
This one is really tricky to say. So if you go Quaoar, Quaoar, Quaoar.
Well, English is not necessarily my native language, but thank you. And I love that. It's important.
It's coming from the Tongva people in what is now called Los Angeles. So.
Yes, for 7,000 years, a long, again, and genderless, without any form. It's not female or male. It's this concept that
pre-binary.
Yes, it brings material form. There's a couple of ideas of the mythology, but still, it's a wonderful. Thinking about Jupiter, which is so much of a perspective and opinions, and it makes sense that this is relating to something that is more visionary in that perspective oriented.
And what I heard at our last iteration of this course, that we don't have this course again until the beginning of next year, because it was one of our first ones this year, is that queer people are taking it as their God, because it is that non-gender, non-binary, the singing and dancing a new existence into reality. Exactly what we need.
And there's so much to share and to learn about the planet itself, and the idea that the queer population has taken this on, because really it shows that within ourselves, that the higher consciousness realizes we all embody what we've called the feminine and masculine, or the yin and the yang, or the assertive and the receptive energies. It's like Kabbalah, it's just a consistent interaction, because I've always think that as one leads out, you're receiving what you embrace, and those that are being interacted with may return, not just receive, but maybe assertive in how they respond. So it's a dynamic.
So I love the setup that you've created here of what are the spectrum of realities, and then within these octaves, almost like a musical, we're looking at sort of a musical score, right? Like Saturn's maybe a little bit more like keeping the beat, and then he's upgrading to Varuna and now Jupiter. I don't know what instrument Jupiter would be, something.
With a lot of overtones. The violin. I played violin, maybe violin.
Yeah, you're more a musician than I am. You can make
there's tones and tones. They're all the same octaves, but they go up and down. There's many, like on the keyboard, there's 88 keys, and you go from the bass to the treble. Yes, in Jupiter and Cancer, again, we're in Gemini right now. So what we've done, just for our audience sake, is that these are the planets as of when the last one will be Uranus in July that we'd mentioned in the beginning. And so at that time, all of these will have ingressed into the new signs. So we're talking about it in Cancer, because Gemini is very information oriented. Connections is to label, to define not define, but to understand our surroundings, but it's also between the spiritual and the material because of the twins, Castor and Pollux.
Yeah, I wasn't remembering that. I love that. So one is in the sky and one is more earth-based?
Yes, well, Castor was mortal, and when he died, Pollux wanted to be with him. And they were kindred spirits, twins. Right. And so, long story short, Zeus said, okay, fine, you can be. And there's various ways, but one way is they visit the underworld of the mortality, and then they elevate up to the higher consciousness of the heavens and spirit. And so it's that reflection of not being one of the same, but integrating, which all of these planets now, as we're realizing, and particularly with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, when they're combined, it's very mystical. But in Cancer, it's our roots and nurturing.
Which so much reminds me of my roots, because where I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S., people would say roots. And here where I am now, people say roots. So just to translate
your roots.
Your roots. your ruts, your roots. Your foundations, right? So
indeed, exactly. And nurturing. So there's a lot. All of these have enormous dynamics that astrology and shows. This one, for one, we'll be talking about more as Jupiter goes into Cancer this coming month in June, actually. But because what is our roots? It can be our childhood. It can be your nation. It's your story. It's your emotional story.
Your sense of tribe.
But we can change that. We can change our story. We can and that idea. And I think with Quaoar in Capricorn, they are opposite, and it is asking to maybe detach, unattach. That's right, unattach, decondition, unattach to what we've considered to be just so strongly our identity of foundations, that maybe it could be a different perspective. And perhaps, as it's been mentioned too, there's that intellect that's can be so strong, but imprisons us because we only think in linear terms. If we use intellect that way, rather embody that instinct, that nature.
We might have to expand to something more like simultaneous time.
My husband's been talking about parallel universes for quite a while.
Right. Yeah. we're going to need to jump into one.
Yes. So here's another one of Makemake, and it is a slide. It says up on top, Dwarf Planet Astrology, and there will be a class. You can find out about this this is devotional focus, and it's a higher octave of Uranus. And here we have Mercury, which happens to be the dispositor of Gemini. So in other words, these octaves will be very entangled in supporting each other. And Mercury goes 3 times around the sun in a year, and it retrogrades. So we're going to have a lot of new energies to contemplate on this. But let's talk about Uranus.
Well, you had mentioned before that Uranus is traditionally known to, be connected with astrology itself. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And I also love your Talk Cosmos logo. The second O could be Uranus, right? Because it
absolutely
has an
Saturn and Uranus. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that visual for people, because probably lots of people who would be watching this would have a sense of the planets, and yet I often realize that there's so much in outer space that we just don't generally know, like the fact that Uranus goes the other way from the other planets and spins on an east-west axis. So when we talk about Uranus being, out of the box thinking, innovation, sudden changes and shifts, it's partly coming from the physical characteristics of the planet itself. And
I love that. Yes, it does.
As you said here, breaking through that linear communication to connect intuitively,
Mm-hmm. It is an intuitive planet. That's right. And what was I going to say about Uranus with its orbital shift that way? It breaks the pattern by doing that physicality that you're talking about in reverse from the others. Well, Venus also rotates backwards, but it doesn't rotate on its side, east to west, like Uranus.
That's true.
And therefore, in vibrational astrology, Uranus is considered to be the present. It has no interest in the past or the future. So I think that's one reason that we think of it as authenticity, like what is authentic right now.
Right. And Mercury then also, you mentioned in that mythology of Castor and Pollux that it has access, right? It's one of the only astrological has access to the underworld. And so there's movement, this ability to go between. And it almost feels to me like the vertical in terms of Mercury, and then Uranus is kind of going outside. So then when we expand out to Makemake, maybe what it feels like to me is this is the fractalized. It's multidimensional. So we're in our octaves currently going into kind of like 2 or 3 dimensions. Makemake is taking us multidimensionally of is what we see in the smallest detail is going to be also representative of the wider picture, the eagle's eye view. Bird's eye view.
I'm glad you threaded all that together, because as a mythology, Makemake is from Easter Island, and there was a floating skull that came, which Melissa and I know we took Alan's class, and you can study it too, or online. But there was a floating skull that came, which is so Saturnian, isn't it? It's the skull of all time, the bones. And in some ways, it also goes with Mercury, which is looking at the bricks or the stones of there's many analogies here. But the point being that the cult goes into a bird cult, because on the island off there, it involves this teamwork. There is the individual's dream of a certain individual in their tribe that is going to be the contestant. But the contestant chooses a servant to swim out to the island to get the tern egg, which is shark infested, and come back, go up a cliff, and the first one to get there wins. And for a year, their tribe gets all the eggs, turn eggs, so there's sustenance, and they're nurtured with all their needs, and they can meditate. And it's visionary. It's collaboration with a mentor and a servant. It's teamwork. It's, my goodness.
It's also one of our really significantly ecological gods. So Haumea as well, Makemake, because a lot of people know of Rapa Nui, Easter Island, as, they cut down all the trees. It turns out, with more recent scientific investigation of I think it's environmental DNA, that the rats ate the trees. It wasn't the people. However, still an awareness of what are we doing with our world? How are we relating to it? Because in the Makemake myth, the people ate all the eggs, they ate all the birds. And so 3 times he had to come back and teach them how to have a much more sustainable and relational way of being with what feeds them, with what keeps them alive.
Oh, Melissa, with your emphasis now studying environmental realms at Brisbane, I am so glad to hear that. And on a very modern note, Haiti, unfortunately, is like has experienced this unfortunate reality where they too had taken away the forest. I know we have to break in a moment, and fished the seas, because I took a class in 1990 at college and environmental, and it was something to remember. Okay, we'll come back, folks. I am with Melissa Elvira Billington. This is Talk Cosmos about star goals with the dwarf planets and the higher octaves. Stay tuned. Just be a moment. See ya.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We're currently in the period of Taurus. By leaving a cycle based upon initiation, the energy of Taurus integrates spirit into a solid form of matter that is tangible and physical. It's an earth sign, concerned with self-sufficiency and the values to maintain the strength of a life form throughout its survival.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to the Ananda Institute of Living Yoga, we cover the world of animals. This week, May 24th, it's an encore presentation. Tune in to hear our last healing show with Dr. Nels and Linda Rasmussen. Together, they helped callers and their animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues, and you can receive a surrogate healing just by listening and following along with Linda's instructions. Hope you can join us. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Alternative Talk 1150.
Okay, let's go on with this, and then we'll come to our break here.
Get back into position.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the chart. Now, in my handy-dandy way, I could animate it, but it was not showing that. So pardon me, this is the entire collection.
No, it looks great.
Yeah,
no,
thank you. So we color-coded it, as you can see, and starting off with the green, because it's Saturn that first ingresses, which will be in May 25th.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, whereas this is, folks, remember, when Uranus has ingress, so it will be at 1 degree there. But anyway, so it is.
Yeah, we're showing when all 3 of the lower octaves have ingressed, and then where the higher octaves are, and they're color-coded, as you're saying. So,
and there's a few more dwarfs, just for people to know. There's Ixion, Salacia, and Haumea here, but we've arrowed out the ones that we're focusing on. So the green for Saturn and Varuna are in green. The Jupiter and Jupiter and Quaoar.
Quaoar.
I had to learn. When I was 5 years old, I had a speech therapist because I couldn't speak. So I'm always learning. But this is good. This is good.
Yeah, no, I feel like when we start to learn these names, then we're more inclusive. We're integrating different cultures. And
say it once more.
Quaoar. Yeah, so it's all vowels.
Yeah, Quaoar. Okay.
Quaoar. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was Jupiter's in the orange. And then we have Varuna, Mercury, and
so Mercury and Uranus and Makemake in purple.
Yeah. What's fascinating? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just going to ask you: did you want to talk about all of the other lines?
A little bit. Let's choose. Notice the red means that they're either in opposition or in square, which in my world means action. It could be, vibrationally speaking, they always think of as in action. Now, that might be that your actions confront somebody else because they aren't ready for the action, but that doesn't mean that your action is intended to be necessarily confrontational. So we have over here, Makemake in Libra, which will stay in Libra, remember, for all this time, and it's good. All of these, and along with Quaoar. So they're interacting, which means that's what we're deciphering here. It's creation. It's how we sing and how we dance and how we put together our cultural teamwork of visions. But along with that, at the moment, Jupiter, while it's in Cancer, is operating. Now, of course, Jupiter changes every year, so this won't. This is just the initiation that is kind of spurring it on. So it's getting us a new visionary concept of our philosophies, our perspective, our belief systems of what it means to be in our route, however it is. Do you say it one way or say it the other way? And listening to,
what supports you, where you come from,
what's your story, what causes defense, because a lot of Cancer is security and safety, and we want to defend and protect. It's that hard shell on that vulnerable emotional.
Well, and it's standing opposite, so you can see Jupiter down at the bottom there, in the yellow orange color.
Well, it is pardon me, Melissa, remember this is a Aries point chart, so everything starts.
No, it's just referencing where it is in the chart to then say it's opposite Quaoar up at the top. So that opposition, that action line of standing opposite. And yes, Sue, as you're saying, this is not houses in the traditional sense if you're looking at your birth chart kind of thing. So we're not interpreting houses, but just the relationship of those two standing opposite one another. And what does that signify? If we have this, and I love what you just said in terms of it being an initiation. It's like the harmonic signature of the next 14 years. You were talking about these guys are going to be in relationship. The lower octaves will shift because they move faster, but the higher octaves are going to stay in relationship and in these signs that they're moving into for the next 14 years. And many, many people in many different ways, scientists and artists and all sorts of people are saying, we've got the next Saturn cycle, basically, the full revolution, 30 years to get it together if we want to persist on this planet.
That's right, because in Aries, it's a seed point of the whole zodiac. That is true, along with Neptune that just entered it, which leads me beautifully. Look, folks, at the green there with the little arrow at Varuna, and Saturn there in early Aries, because it's also in this interesting dynamic with Makemake here, as you can see, it's sextile and it's trine. And there was an opposition, and it's called not the complex people, but it's a very resolution point. That point is a resolution between the opposition, which is what? Varuna is our nobility and our sovereignty, meaning the hope. If we are in that 30-year, not if, but because we're in a 30-year changing evolution of Saturn, of seeing our accountability and responsibilities, then it has everything to do with how we interpret our integrity of sovereignty in Leo.
So you're saying that Varuna there is the resolution point?
Yes, it is. It's a point of Thales, as it's called. And it's where a planet is the apex, trine and sextile in opposition. And therefore it helps mitigate that resolve.
And what was the point again? Point of?
A point of Thales. Thales was a mathematician back in the Greek days, and THALES.
So the main thing to take away from that is that the resolution point is for us to come into our sovereignty, and which is based on doing what we love, right? The core. So it's not doing something to gain recognition or a reputation. It's like, this is what I would do regardless. This is what I do anyway, which is actually how I'm here with you, because I was doing the astrology anyway, and I just kept doing it. And then Alan started to recognize me, and other people started to recognize me. And so here I am with you. So it's a different kind of, I think, dynamic than we might think Saturn, I have to do the work and I have to like establish the reputation. And this is more coming from the heart.
Internal, just like we spoke of with Saturn, that's looking, because Aries is so personal. Thank you. That is very well put. And in a sense, maybe on the flip side of that, why recently I have the opportunity of being a tutor with your Eris class, which we just finished last night, which is fascinating. Right. Well, let's go to the third one, and then we'll lead on. It's with Uranus, which is signified this particular date on the 7th of July. And these are based out of Greenwich, just for timing for folks to realize. But it is an Aries point, again, just to reiterate. So here, Uranus is sextile to Saturn, which is at possibly the time limits, but happening. And it's also, my goodness, it's all kinds of good things. It's sextile to Varuna. It's trine. It's also a Thales point, you could say, with that same dynamic. And it's sextile. So we have a big picture here of, they call it angel wings when you have two. And I learned that from John Chinworth with another panel that I have, because Susan Tompkins, to give, I believe she's the one that phrased that angel wings when you have two Thales points. But it's all synergetic.
Well, and again, this is not necessarily the orientation that you'd always be looking at with the houses, but what we're looking at now, what I see, is a boat with a sail and the point of the sail going towards Makemake. But I love that angel's wings as well.
And it's called that, sails and wedges. Mm-hmm.
There's a symmetry and the balance at the what is now the bottom of this chart, but then also a directionality, like an arrow point or a sail point over to the right towards Makemake.
Yeah, one thing with the singing and dancing energies that we have there in Capricorn is having a fated push-pull or needs to learn how to work with our nobility, our sovereignty of Varuna. But that's where all these other dynamics are lending. It's not just an immediate, I'm going to produce something and bring my thoughts into form. They have all these other dynamics that they're working with to do it.
Well, I think musical score is a really great example, right? Because you can pull out just the one instrument, and that's have its own music, its own musicality, but that is not the entire piece.
Thank you. Yes.
It is that expansion of our capacity.
Yeah.
That's also Makemake, of being able to see and hear the entire piece as well as one. Yeah.
Good.
So now what are we looking at?
This is a brief snapshot so we can jump ahead, but it was just showing because we're still in May and all of these ingresses are yet to happen. In a week will be Saturn, and then next month is going to be Jupiter, and then the following month is Uranus. So just looking at one of the dynamics between the one in June with Jupiter and Uranus, and because Mercury is the lower octave of Uranus, and also the dispositor of, rules, or dispositor of Gemini. Looking interestingly, at first, Mercury is the messenger, Hermes, as you'd say, it goes down below to the underworld and up to the heavens.
Little wings on his feet.
Speaking of
wings.
And it's right next to, when in Jupiter ingresses, they're right next door to each other, 1 degree, they're conjunct, so they're communicating. And then in the next month, it jumps over to Varuna. But interestingly, it will then retrograde. And it'll go back over here to Jupiter and come across. So in other words, it's really doing as a lower octave, we're going to, in that retrograde, just to give an example of how Mercury is going to be working in the future. And it's in Leo, so it's going to be very much about how we manifest.
So it sounds like, to sum it up, you're saying there's a reiteration. Mercury is kind of playing between these higher octaves, whether they're Jupiter and Uranus or farther out into Makemake as well.
Yeah, it's a messenger of we're going to get a lot of input, and of course, it stays in a sign for a short period of time, except for when it retrogrades 3 times. It revolves around the sun 3 times, so it's pretty active.
And there's just I don't want to speak for the world, but I can probably safely say that most people are feeling an overwhelm of information and what to trust and what is true. And so Mercury with information is not necessarily giving us context, whereas Uranus kind of gives some insight, and then Makemake is that contextual. Yeah. So Mercury is kind of going this and this. What about this and this?
And it will, right, exactly. Connections. It's connections. And it is communication in all realms. And most interestingly, right now we have Jupiter. There's so many doors that are switching, like the parallel universes we're talking about, because we have Jupiter of our perspectives and belief systems in Gemini, which will end in going into the nurturing Cancer. But meanwhile, Uranus, which is in Taurus, which is more of our survival and resources and values, is going to go into Gemini for 7 years. Well, let's go on.
Yeah. Oh, here we are.
Yeah, this would have been at the halftime, so we'll kind of speed through this. We have a bit, but we're working great. Melissa Elvira Billington in Brisbane, Australia. Again, you can find Melissa on Substack. That's her name, Melissa Elvira Billington. You can go right back to this slide too, because you'll have access to it. Or at YouTube, My Yoga Wellington, and myself, Talk Cosmos. Dwarf Planet University with Alan Clay right there is dwarfplanetastrology.com. And Makemake will be on June 14th. And it's a devotional focus. And Varuna, the higher octave of Saturn, is going to be in August 26th. So get ready.
These are 6-week courses, so they start on those days, and
very reasonable and interactive. You really have 6 different, quite a few. It's well-developed program, so check it out.
And it's accessible. You don't have to be an astrologer. We have lots of people who are quite new to astrology, actually coming into astrology from outer space.
I just worked with a student last night within a year. She was so pleased that she was able to delineate, because it starts off with the houses, then it goes into the aspects. It's really internalized sense of how to see these planets through your own lens and then shared through the other students. And people from all around the world. I mean, Europe, the United States, Australia, beyond, Africa. It's marvelous.
It is.
Trust the longer.
I was just going to say that I'm all about embodied consciousness now that you have this slide up. And so that's how the dwarf planet structures is like, how are we embodying this? How are we seeing this in our lives? How do we then action it in the world? So, and that's coming from my, from my background, my emphasis on embodied consciousness is from being a yoga teacher for half my life.
And all around the world. Yes. And this is a wonderful Substack with marvelous blogs that are very
thought-provoking, hopefully.
Yes, ma'am. That's right. YouTube on Talk Cosmos, you can go to. Yeah. And we have every week a program, and I put in 2 for Planet Buzz because they're most appropriate. There was one with Adam Gainsbourg about Mars itself, and he'll be back in August. And then Saturn, we just did last week, I believe, with Jason Hawley, which will be ingressing later in a week, and pretty dynamic. And then next week is the monthly new moon that I have. And then there's another one happening. Yeah. But I also do a dwarf planet series. It's now and again with Liz Mouchette on hers Astrology Star Sisters Talk Over Tea. So you can listen to that. We did one about the Neptunian ingress with the seed points of all these planets.
Cool.
So thank you folks for signing up for the newsletters. There is a vibrational astrology coming up on Labor Day called Fractal Cosmos. Let's get to us. We have a few minutes here, about good 10 minutes. This is when these 3 are actually all at 9 degrees. 2 of them are exact.
Wow.
Yeah. And the other is like less than 30 minutes Leo. Yeah. And that will be the 23rd of July. And I just left what it was in here. But again, we have those angel wings, the sails and the kites, as you had mentioned. And there's still that T-square with Jupiter. What's it telling me is that we really have an empowerment of the visionary ability of Makemake with Quaoar.
Quaoar. Yeah, it sounds like you bounce off. Quaoar.
Quaoar. I'm singing.
Yeah, maybe that's what you have to do. Sing it.
Of relationships. I think that's one thing we were picking up of the Libra part of this, and along with the other the the outer planets that we're used to in Gemini and Aries, of the dynamics of connections and starts and communication and relationships. That what we see is evolving, and it's have this pinnacle point perhaps, but it's over a large period of time. So have faith. What's your thoughts here about some ideas?
Well, I just love what you're saying in terms of relational. And, there's been a lot of research of, hopefully, I would say, let's say there's more research of respect for indigenous cultures and ways of being, indigenous knowledge systems. And that is definitely what Quaoar and Makemake and also Varuna is our first Indian, Yes. So I just love the diversity consciousness that we're seeing in the heavens now of what it exists on Earth. All of these different cultures now out of the Greco-Roman pantheon, but the relationships that you're saying about Libra is also so key in indigenous knowledge systems. So it's all based on relationships and how we're relating, the integrity that we're relating to one another, all beings, not just human beings.
Yeah, Varuna, I forgot to mention, is a water god. Originally of both the waters from the rain and the oceans. But then as it came along, Varuna had the insights to realize that there was a problem with the waters that would resolve itself, because you can't control water. Water just circulates. But in the event, gave that to Indra, without going into further detail because we're trying to move along here, but it is the god, it is a water god of the oceans and also of love, because there was Rama who wanted to cross to get his beloved and was going to destroy the ocean. But again, in his infinite wisdom, Varuna said, knowing that you can't, the ocean is going to act like the ocean. You can't destroy it. You can't do anything. And told Rama, go ahead, find your beloved. You can cross, you can bridge it. So there is this sense of integrity with Varuna, of nobility, that doesn't have the cutthroat ability of Saturn that people might consider when it's external and you're thinking of accessing your goals, but rather the internal source of love.
And I just want to add on that. I absolutely feel like I need to say that if you haven't seen the film Ocean with David Attenborough, this will give you a very strong Varuna sense of what Sue's talking about in terms of the love. Our ocean, really, in terms of our planet actually should be called ocean because it's more ocean than Earth. In terms of its volume, in terms of what covers the planet, we have more ocean than Earth. And we are doing tremendous damage to the ocean with bottom trawling, and it needs to stop. So it is potentially one of our only solutions for our own species remaining on Earth to take care of our ocean. So that's what Varuna is bringing in. Yeah,
we just came back from the volcano. It was erupting at 1,000 feet. We were able to see it. It was just amazing. Pele a couple of days ago. However, coming back, there's a beach here just south in Kailoa Kona that was closed because they're seeding the reef. I'm so excited because it's one where all the population here, people go down and see the reefs, and
there's the protected area in the ocean outside of Hawaii that's the largest in the world, on land or at sea. So definitely go see that film because it features in the film.
Good. I know. It's our, yes. The dispositors, just to go through this, just to give an idea. Now, remember, Varuna is in Leo for all this period of time. The sun will change monthly. How we're getting that sense of nobility is going to be.
The dispositor is the
ruler.
Sun, yeah. So just for people who are new to astrology, I know it's like your language, but somebody else might be, what is she talking about?
Quaoar. In Capricorn will always be Saturn. Now Saturn changes every 2.5 years and will just be entering Aries. It's just leaving the water. It's going into the steamy fire of Aries for 2.5 years. Makemake in Libra is an air sign relationship between two things, and its ruler, or the one it goes to, is Venus. So there's sextile squares and quincunx. You can see this, that they do change in how they relate through these years, and in 2039 it will go into Aries. So we have a minute as the music goes on.
How did that happen? I thought an hour. I was like, how are we going to say anything in an hour?
How are we visualizing? I think the idea that you brought up, the ocean, is paramount. That's one of my dearest. I see it every day. It's we're 70% water. The moon moves our vibrations like water. We need to enact and be resolute with our streams, with the fish, with the waters.
From love. I mean, you protect what you love, right? And that's also that Jupiter in Cancer is we protect what we love. So we have enough more.
Thank you, Melissa, Elvira Billington, Octave Stargoals with Dwarf Planets. Return. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.